Hello.
It's me because I turned it on. Oh, we have folks tuning in from California. No,
this one. This is the one that you see. Yeah, that's why it's sticking there.
we have folks in London, folks from Kenya, Edinburgh, Ghana, Boston, Seattle.
I don't know if joining one.
Yeah, okay. I think we should get started. Oh, I'm a, did you say? There's 60 people. Yeah, we should start. So where's the item?
So let me leave this mic.
Oh, Dr. The good doctor's on.
Oh, really?
Listen, Donovan is coming. Okay, Chef, you ready? Oh, there's my mom. Hi, mommy.
Hi, Mom. Mama Rita.
Yes, you know Mama Rita so well. Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? On Zoom? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to be here, especially partnering with the Library of African Diaspora on this event. And thank y'all for folks joining online. But we have so many people from Stockholm, from Ghana, from Oakland, California. Thank y'all so much for being here. My name is Jamie Swift. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director and founder of Black Women Radicals. We are a Black feminist advocacy organization based in the US, but we're dedicated to Black feminist internationalism and uplifting Black feminist voices from around the world. And this event, in partnership with the Library of African Diaspora, is about African Feminist Marronage. This is a part of our series on Black feminist maroonage, which interrogates how Black women, queer and trans folks create spaces of safety, refuge, sanctuary, not only for themselves, but their posterity. And so if we know anything about the Maroons are autonomous settlements, particularly of Black folks in the Americas who were either enslaved, right, or who were freed and settlements for refuge. But we know Maroonage should not always have to have a connection to slavery. About sites of resistance, sites of joy, sites of creativity, spirituality, amongst other things. So without further ado, I want to introduce some guests. Can everyone hear me on the Hello? Okay, perfect. Without further ado, I want to introduce our lovely guests, because this African Feminist Marronage, this series, this event is really speaking to how African feminists create maroons from their respective cultures, countries, and their jobs and work that they do. And I think that's quite important because oftentimes global North-based Black feminisms, African feminisms are often centered in the global North. And this event is meant to disrupt that and to show what solidarity means in terms of survival and amongst other things. So first we have Vida Agbolosu. Vida is an award-winning cook at the Library of African Diaspora. She is a passionate singer and mother from the Volta region of Ghana, but currently resides in Accra. She is very intentional and passionate about feminism. So thank you, Vida. Next, we have Noor Elfaki, who we see online on the screen. Noor Elfaki is an award-winning Sudanese short fiction writer, published and honored both nationally and regionally. She is a content creator, passionate about amplifying Sudanese, particularly advocating for peace and the rich culture of Sudan. She is a researcher and final year medical student at the University of Khartoum, Sudan. Thank you, Noor.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have Vangile Gantsho. Vangile Gantsho is a healer, poet, and co-founder of Impepo Press, a Pan-Africanist intersectional feminist publishing house. She currently serves as editor of New Coin Literary Journal and is the author of 2 poetry collections, Red Cotton and Undressing in Front of the Window. Gantsho holds an MA from the university, currently known as Rhodes, and is a graduate of the Fambo Mbeki African Leadership Institute. In 2018, Gantsho was named one of Mali and Guardian's top young 200 South Africans. Her poetry has been published in various literary publications around the world, including New Daughters of Africa and Wild Imperfections, an anthology of womanist poems. She has participated in festivals, literary programs across 3 continents, has curated and produced in person as well as online international programs, and has taught at several universities in South Africa and the USA. Gantsho declares herself in her work to creating and/or supporting spaces that encourage Black feminine visibility and healing, such as Ukathola, a creative writing resistance to the multiple violences inflicted against our bodies and personhoods, and Small Girl Rising connected to the divine Black feminine, an international intergenerational poetry healing initiative. Vangile is also a mother. So to a beautiful, beautiful girl, Ulivu. Thank you, Vangile. Next up, we have Tracy Owoo, last but not least. Tracy Owoo is a queer feminist activist, a results-driven project manager, and a dedicated community worker committed to advancing feminism, LGBTQIA rights, and social justice in Ghana and across the continent and the world at large. Through various feminist lenses, she leads and supports diverse projects, from community-wide festivals and archiving initiatives to educational workshops and advocacy efforts that break down barriers, foster visibility, and center empowerment within LGBTQIA communities. She currently works as the coordinator for the Accra think tank, a movement gap-building initiative for women and non-binary individuals that identify as LBQ, the program's director at LGBT Plus Rights Ghana, a member of the activist grant-making panel of ISDAO, a queer feminist West African fund, and a project lead for the Decolonized Medicine series by Liberation Medicine School. She is deeply passionate about and rooted in community work and movement building, and is honored to be in roles that allow her to contribute meaningfully to the growth and sustainability of queer and feminist organizing. Woo! Y'all be putting in work, child, okay? Child, this is really beautiful and such an honor to have, to be in community with you all. So my first question is about the theme of the next questions are about African feminisms in theory, embodiment, and in practice. And so I'm curious is how did you come to, or how were you called to your feminist practice? And on the other question is, who or what has inspired or shaped your feminist politic and your practice?
Hello. So how did I get caught into it? It started when I got into the movement space, when I became an activist. I became an activist because I accepted that I was queer and I was looking for community. So in search of community, the first group I found were a group of activists who were doing community work. So I joined, I volunteered, and I started engaging in movement. Okay.
Oh, they're asking you to speak up.
Okay. So I started engaging in movement spaces, and I realized there was a gap, or there was a difference in how we were moving in the movement space. There was a difference in the kind of roles that women and non-binary persons were occupying, and there was a difference in the role that cisgendered men were occupying. You could see that in the roles that we were occupying as women and non-binary persons, it was more productive roles, or roles that needed us to give a lot of labor, lots of programming positions, or monitoring and evaluation, and directors would usually be like cis men. So from that realization, and also just understanding what the history of LGBT plus organizing is, which is that it started through HIV and key population work, and that's sort of how the movement has been built. So whoever, like, it centers, or it does continue to center those who were centered back in that period. And so just all of this realization and wanting to understand why that was happening, and also this, how that was connected to the movement that we were doing, is how I got into feminism. And also just wanting to have a lens to look at my work through, to understand that I'm doing work that is not harmful, work that is central, who it needs to center, work that is not extractive. So it was just a process. Just wanted to understand what was happening in this space. Why are we replicating such norms? And then also needing something to rule my work by, or something to like guide me as I do the work.
Hi. So I can see that you're asking if we can you hear it at this? Can people hear it at this volume online?
I think it's clear.
Okay.
Yes.
So okay, cool. So igama lam Vangile gantsho, and I think how I come into feminist practice. So how I come into feminism is all the women in my family, well, not necessarily all the women, but a few women in particular. I didn't know that it was called feminism. All I knew is that these were women who refused to kind of color inside. Okay. These were women who refused to color inside the lines. These were women, so there was Usnowelile who had 12 children and enjoyed her traditional Xhosa brew and would clean all the pots, the big black pots, and that from all the different events, and that's how she fed her family. Or my aunt, who was an MK vet, Uzanele Maleki, who was an MK vet, and she came back from exile and she refused to hand in her AK-47 because she didn't feel safe. But these were women who were willing to take the risks required to create a world of their own. And so I think as I was growing up and I started realizing that the world isn't built safe for people like me, I found community with them. And I started to think about the different ways I can make the world safe for myself in whatever ways. And as I grew older and as my ideas around what the world should look like grew, that kind of became specific in the practice.
How I came to being a feminist, it all started when I was very, very young, at the age of 10, living with my mom and a stepdad. The kind of living and treatments that my mom has to endure from that marriage. And she also sometimes telling me about the past experiences in marriage to my dad as well made me I decided to become a feminist. The things she has to endure were very, very bad, really, really bad. Growing up, I've been living with her since. Everywhere she goes, I'm with her. Wherever I go, I make sure she's with me. And so come to realize that Ghanaian women especially really are going through a lot. And so that's formed my decision to become a feminist. Thank you.
And thank you all. And I also want to express thank you for the vulnerability, because in many times or many cases, when we are called to be feminists, right, it's either of seeing some sort of inequity, like you said, Tracy. In my case too, vangile, my mother or my grandmother would never say she was a feminist or she is a feminist, but she is a feminist, right? Because she taught me a feminist ethos. She may not identify with the term, but you know, there are certain things that I still hold dear into my Black feminist praxis. And Vida, I can also relate, because when you see violence in the home, that can also, it starts from the home and then you start seeing it in the world. And so you recognize that nowhere is particularly safe for Black women, for African women, and queer and trans folks. So this goes into the question about, oh, I'm so sorry, Noor, please forgive me. Noor.
No, it's okay. It's easy to forget the virtual guests.
Noor, can you share, please, how did you come to or how were you called to your feminist practice, and who inspires or shapes your feminist practice?
Well, I mostly agree with what you just said, Jamie. I feel like when we think about it, all our mothers and grandmothers were feminists in their own way. But to me, feminism was like a survival instinct. I learned to be a feminist the day I learned to stand up for myself in my school, in my neighborhood, in my house, and especially growing up in Sudan, where I saw how structural violence and cultural expectations and dictatorships all stand together and conspire to shrink women and their lives. So I feel like my feminist practice emerged as a response to all of that. To seeing Sudanese women being erased in all different spaces and seeing girls being forced or manipulated into fitting certain stereotypes and certain social roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. Thank you so much. And I think all of our experiences can have propelled us to create or to catalyze, like, what does it look like for a safe space in a world where the people that you love and people who you don't even know are not willing to help you be safe? And so what does that mean for particularly, African feminists, African queer and trans and gender expansive folks to create these sites of refuge, right? And so that goes into the next question. I'm curious, as feminists, what does the concept of maroonage mean to you? And what does feminist world making mean to you? And so and who are people who inspire this maroonage, but also I'm just curious what the term or definition means to you and how do you create maroonage in your everyday lives? Noor, would you like to go first?
Sure. To me, maroonage means to escape, not just to physically escape, because sometimes it's impossible to escape what's happening to you physically, but I mean the epistemological space, refusing to be defined by the systems that oppress us. And my perspectives on maroonage were actually sharpened by the lens of Sudanese women that are currently fighting battles every day, walking miles to fetch water, or breaking rocks in mountains, or documenting the war in different states in Sudan, building mutual aid networks, running collective kitchens. And I actually would like to share a few photos of what's happening on the ground in Sudan, if that's okay.
Yes.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it now.
So the woman in this picture is what I consider a word maker. She's an icon of hope and resistance in Sudan, and she's been displayed in most states, or at least safe states in Sudan. This is Dr. Hanadi Noor, peace be upon her. She was recently killed just a few weeks ago by the Janjaweed militia. She was targeted alongside other refugees and displaced persons in a displacement camp in Al-Fashir. Al-Fashir, that's the only city standing right now in the face of the militia in the states of Darfur. So Hanadi was famously known as Bint al-Fashir, which means the daughter of al-Fashir, as she was as resistant and as strong as the city itself. And we can see her here, not only armed by the weapon that she chose to defend her people with, but also by the medical knowledge that she used to heal the wounded, and the hands that she used to feed the starving children of Zamzam camp. To me, this is an example of a real word maker. This is the camp that they targeted, just a bunch of tents. This is after the attacks. I would also like to share another remarkable space that has shaped my perspective on maroonage. Shown in this picture is collective kitchens that provide food and social protection to millions fleeing the war in most Sudanese states. They are mostly run by the emergency response rooms, which are a community-led initiative led mostly by youth and women. And it was formed following the withdrawal of international organizations operating in Sudan and the inability of state structures and institutions to provide service to citizens amidst the war. These rooms were actually nominated for Nobel Peace Prize in 2024 for their efforts and their ability to bridge this gap in protecting the vulnerable groups. So these pictures actually represent what maroonage and what space and word making means to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noor. Thank you. And I just want to say, when we talk about maroonage too, I want to just say thank you once again for the vulnerability, because we know what's going on in Sudan right now. And I just want to thank you for being open to share about even loss. And how is that's also a part of our world making, and how do we navigate grief and displacement and amongst other things. And so thank you so much for that. Anyone else would like to share about what the concept of maroonage means to them?
So, to me, the concept of maroonage personally is to be strong and to survive, to try to be strong and survive in any situation or wherever you find yourself in the world. Be strong and try to survive. Because without being strong and survival, no one is going to hear your story. So first you be strong, then you try to survive, to get out of wherever you are and share your story for everyone to hear. Personally, it may not be the explanation for maroonage, but personally, that is what maroonage is to me. Thank you.
I think I want to speak alongside what you're saying. Because I feel like if you feel unsafe, you cannot function. And one of the major kind of nervous dispositions created by this patriarchal society that we live in is that it forces us into holes where we are alone. And we feel like we have to do everything alone. So for example, if you think about women and postpartum, you think about how in many indigenous communities, there is an understanding that when a woman gives birth, she must be surrounded by other women who will help care for the baby while she recovers her body. I mean, in Korea and Japan, they have fancy hospitals, clinics now for that. But even in villages, the understanding is that there is need for this fourth trimester for the woman to, and they even call it the open grave, for the woman's body to heal while she is also sustaining the life of this child. But if she has to do it alone, what does it look like for her survival? How then is she able to be of sustenance to her child, produce milk while still recovering her body and having to multitask in a world that is demanding that she participates in ways that her body is not ready to participate in yet? And so I know that many indigenous peoples have always understood that community is an integral part of healing, of society, of survival. There is a reason why, even when there is a reason why we organize, why we live in community, and in a way to resist this forced isolation, I have always sought out community. And if I think about where Toni Morrison says, if there is a story that you have not heard, that you do not think has been told, write it. And so I've always kind of approached community in the same way. If I have not felt like I am receiving the kind of community my spirit and my soul desire, I have tried to find ways to create it.
Thank you. I also echo that, and it's also how I became a community organizer. It's just by recognizing what I don't have or what is missing and trying to put it out there or trying to create it so that it becomes something that I benefit from, and also something that community also benefits from. To me, maroonage is to refuse what we've been given, is to refuse like what it's said that I am or what it is said that I deserve because of like whatever package I've been put in, and to go beyond surviving to thriving. I think that's like the point for me. That's the difficult point. It's like the moving from the surviving to thriving, because like you don't even know what is possible. Like there's the sense of what is possible is warped because of everything that is happening. But I think it's possible, and my hope is that we can move past surviving to thriving.
I love all the responses, because to me, like I think about maroonage and the concept of a Black Brazilian theorist, an activist. Her name was Beatriz Nascimento, and she theorizes the quilombo, which is a maroon, but the quilombo in Brazilian Portuguese as not just um, like a symbol of Black resistance, but that happened historically, but like everywhere we go, we are the quilombo, we are the maroon, we carry the power and the possibilities and Black futurity with us. And I think that's what like all of you are saying, like, how do we survive? How do we move on thriving? How do we build community and not just be mules, right? What Zora Neale Hurston say, Black women are the mules of the world. Well, not just as mules, but also how are we poured into and create a world where, like you said, Tracy, where we're not just surviving, but thriving. And I wonder if we ever will get there, which is one of my little provocative questions. And so this goes into the next question. In your opinion, what social conditions, power dynamics, and inequalities have catalyzed the radical need for feminists to create and have our own liberatory spaces and sites of sanctuary, refuge, and joy and recovery? And I'm also interested in how do we have to go internal and address our own internal biases and stereotypes as feminists, as feminists. How do we do that internal work, or what do we need to address to really create a maroon that is safe for all of us?
I want to take the second part, which is what do we address, or how do we get there? I think it's mainly in love and care. One thing I've come to understand is that we don't have to be friends, or it's not possible to be friends with everyone, but it doesn't mean that we can't be in community in love. It doesn't mean we shouldn't build in love or we should have animosity. So it's in that, it's rooting our work in love and care. I think that's how we're going to achieve these things.
Um, I come from a country that is very violent towards women. The number of women in South Africa who are sexually assaulted, who are killed by intimate partners, who are raped on a daily basis, who are attacked, is astounding. And we're talking about the many different types of violences, from sexual violence to physical violence, to emotional violence, to financial violence, to spiritual violence. And so what does it mean to live in a world where you inherently don't feel safe in any way? You don't feel safe on the street and you don't feel safe at home. It surely tells me that something is broken. And if something is broken, I'm constantly battling with the question of, can it be fixed? And is it a matter of, yes, there is a solution, there is a way to fix it, or must it all burn down and we start again? And I have come to a personal realization that as a people, and I speak about Black people because that is my love and my focus and where my heart lives. So it's not to say I don't care about other communities, but when I am going to direct my energy and my love, it is going to be towards Black people. So as Black people, what have we forgotten about ourselves that has put situation we now act in a way that I have to believe is against the grain of who we are. And so I know that a lot of people focus on decolonial work because we can't ignore how the violence of colonialism and the pre-colonial colonialism has shaped the makeup or the genetic makeup of Black people now. But I am interested in what do we how do we understand a source, a core understanding of this is me, this is not me, and how do I use that to reimagine myself? And so I feel like memory is a primary tool for us to be able to create community, but also to understand ourselves further so that we can then reimagine ourselves.
So, in my opinion, I would share a little light on the social conditions. So, I come from a family or a background where much attention is given to the male child other than the female. I think that is not the way to go. Yes, I think that is not the way to go. In as much as the male child needs attention, the female child also needs attention. Because we go through a lot. Females go through a lot. From where I come from, they go through a lot. And so we need to bridge that gap, starting from the family, from the source. We need to, from the Ghanaian perspective, yes, we need to bridge that gap. And I think that will help shift or make space for feminism to take its rightful place. Thank you.
Vida. Noor?
Personally, I think there's a lot to be done and a lot of fronts to be conquered if we're ever going to get anywhere, actually. I think for feminist wars to emerge, we first need to deconstruct or collapse the current global order that's profiting from our oppression. That means deconstructing capitalism, militarism, patriarchy, and all the extractive systems that continue to treat Africa as a resource, not as people. I also think we must decolonize knowledge and authority and make space for African feminism that is grounded in lived experience, in our realities, in our political struggle. And we must also confront religious practices that are weaponized against women, their bodies, their lives. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I also want to kind of go back to this other question because we're talking about power dynamics and inequalities, right? And we're seeing it from like the outside in, and it's also on I want to go back to kind of like the inside out because Bell Hooks said something so powerful that always sticks with me, but she said patriarchy has no gender, right? So what are the ways that we have, even though we do this work as feminists and you do the work, what'd you say? Yes, that women, yes, thank you. What's your name? Hi, F.A. So F.A., y'all, said that women, and I'll say women, queer, trans folks, marginalized folks can also carry these oppressions with us. So how do we address the internal discord amongst feminists or even just amongst women and other women and queer and trans folks, because that also has to be interrogated too. So what are y'all's thoughts on that?
So I think women need to support each other. Women must support each other in all levels, in all areas. Because in some parts, I feel like sometimes or most of the times, we women are our own enemies. Because we sometimes we don't want our fellows to thrive. Once you're thriving in an area of women, some are not happy that you are thriving or you are trying to go forward, you're moving forward. And so we must learn to love one another. We must support each other no matter what, whether it is I or whether it is you. I must support you and you must support me in every area. That's what I think.
I'd like to pick back on what both Vida and Tracy said about love being a language that is essential for kind of deconstructing patriarchy. I would like to think of kindness and empathy as a methodology, as an approach, because I don't think that we can, when Audre Lorde says you cannot use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. I don't think that violence is a way that we can, so if, for example, I encounter a patriarchal woman, let's say I go to a petrweni, like my spiritual home, and I experience homophobia, and I understand that I myself as a queer person cannot put myself in that identity here in this space because then I will feel safe. But I also understand that these are very entrenched views that will not go away just because I'm like, hi, everybody has rights. They're not going to hear me. I understand that in that particular situation, I need to try something else. And so I approach the conversation through multiple examples. We're thinking about spirituality, and we understand that a person can be embodied by both male and female ancestors, which means that they can display both male and female characteristics, but we don't understand queerness? Okay. And then you say this in isiXhosa, and then it shifts something because it isn't a loud language far away brought by white people. It is something that is very tangible and real that makes sense. And so I think that situations are different and patience is required, but more often than not, case by case and calling in and having love guide us allows us to create a permanent change, because now I'm saying something in your language in a way that doesn't chastise you, in a way that humanizes you and humanizes me, and shows that this gap that has been created between the two of us is actually not as big as we think. And that is a lot more long lasting. So the next time they are in a conversation with someone else and they're like, yo, they'll be like, hey, hang on, but have you thought about this? And so I think that for me, that makes sense.
Thank you so much for that. It's also one of the ways I've been, what's the word, approaching situations like this. I now want people to think for themselves instead of me pushing onto them what I want them to understand, because the results are not there. But if I ask you a question and you go home and think about it, maybe from there you can have a change of mind, or from there you can become rational and see what I need you to see. For me, what I would say about how internally we can make sure that we are not moving along with these systems, or we're not replicating them, is to check ourselves personally and to check others, but to also once again do that in love and do that in care. It's very easy to attack people as a marginalized community when others are showing traits of oppression, or when people are trying to oppress you, or when you can say that maybe this is an abuser or this is someone who's causing harm. But it's possible to to approach these things with love and care, in a way that doesn't make someone feel, outside or like a third party or excluded or isolated because they show certain traits. And I think also in how we engage externally, that's also how we engage with ourselves. If you're being harsh to someone because they are exhibiting oppressive traits, and you go home and maybe you realize that I lead a team, and I'm asking my team member to work overtime and I'm not paying them overtime. Now, how do you sit with yourself and be kind to yourself and understand that, okay, that's a problem, now I need to change it? Because if somebody else is doing it outside, you're ready to like bite them. You're ready to like, get at them. So to check ourselves, both personally and others, but in love and care, just really calmly and nicely without replicating any violence, because what is it for? Like, why would we do that?
I'm sorry, Noor, would you like to share?
I also think that we should be very careful in how we engage with women who hold patriarchal views. We must also be understanding of the circumstances that led them to holding these views. We are all growing in an extremely toxic patriarchal environment, so it's perfectly acceptable that some women would turn, or actually most women would withhold some patriarchal views, and we should be careful in how we address that problem. And we also must allow for different opinions and different views. I like how Jamie always says African feminism's plural, to allow for these views and different spaces and different options even for women to choose their own feminism.
Thank you all so much. I'm still working on I think, I was gonna say something, but let me stop. It's my other side coming out. I think that doing this work can be very difficult. And I love all your perspectives, because it's so easy to be to internalize the toxicity, especially when you're trying to fight for a better world and the world just seems like it's getting worse. And then the people that look like you or have the same politics as you are coming against you. And so I think all your responses are so beautiful, because it just reminds us, like, what are we doing this for, and to keep the course. And I want to go back to this politics of memory, because a lot of the discourse about Black feminisms, African feminisms, have been marginalized and sidelined for various reasons, right? We talk about transphobia, queerphobia, colonialism, and I'm curious, as you all create maroons and safe spaces for yourselves and your communities, how do you center the leadership, the historical and contemporary leadership of African feminists? And I say this as my first time here in Ghana, but not the first time on the continent. You hear so much about Nkrumah, and of course, an icon, but what about, we learned about the Makola market women who actually financed Nkrumah's, campaign? Who are the other women or other queer and trans folks who created movements but are never really spoken about? So I'm curious about the importance of the politics of memory, as vangile discussed, and also in creating sites of maroonage for ourselves. How do we uphold the legacies and leadership of African feminists in our work and our world making?
Isn't it strange how Black women are in the same sentence revered goddesses and sexualized and dismissed? So we are something sacred, we are something to be objectified, and we are something to be forgotten, all in the same sentence. And I'm not saying this is untrue, because we all exist in multiplicities. But I think that because I exist in a literary space and I am interested in stories and the stories that are told, I came into publishing because I came across a story. I was looking for women who were complex, women who weren't appendages of someone else's lives. So my identity is my own, is not Winnie Madikizela Mandela, wife of Nelson Mandela, is not, because she was Winnie Madikizela long before the hyphen Mandela. And long after. I'm interested in women who decide for themselves what their lives will look like with or without children, with or without church, with or without husbands, with or without wives, with or without respectability. And I came across this story called Life by Bessie Head. It's a short story, magnificent short story. And this short story talks about this young woman named Life who moves into this rural village. Everyone is like, oh my, she's so glamorous. How does she do it? And then they find out that she is a prostitute. And then they're like, and people start moving away from her. But then others are a little intrigued and they're like, oh, she's a prostitute. And then they find out that she's a prostitute without a pimp. And no one can accept that. Because how is it possible? And I think it was that story that made me realize that I wanted to start a feminist press where women could exist in all their multiplicities and all their contradictions. What if I am the type of woman who enjoys going to church, but also enjoys twerking on Saturday night in, unmentionable places? But I know what praise and worship does for my spirit. And that's what I'm searching for. Men are allowed to be complex and complicated, and in fact, are celebrated for their complexities. And beyond that, the shadows of their complexities are hidden and excused as part of manhood. And so I believe that if we have stories of complex women living complex lives with multiple contradictions, then perhaps we can start seeing that there are many different versions of women. And this is not to say that a woman who just wants, and I don't say just in a basic kind of way, a woman who just wants to raise her child, feed her husband, take care of her family is living a life that should not be like that, is anti-feminist. There is much honor in the service of motherhood and wifehood if that is your choice. And I believe that if we have more written stories of women making their own choices because it is their desire for their own self-actualization, then this is how we bring into the imagination the multiple versions of womanhood.
I also would like to say that how we keep this leadership, or how we keep the leadership in our stories alive, is through storytelling. The people who supported Nkrumah, their story was only made public or made visible through people who wanted to tell it, not those who wrote the independent story. It was women or activists who came together and put together like a story, video type thing, and then showed it and made that piece of history really popular. So this is to say that it's up to us to hold our narratives and center them. We can do it through archiving, we can do it through storytelling, we can do it through teachings like this, just ways that we can continuously make sure that we're carrying our stories with us, or we're carrying our histories with us. One of the ways we do that at where I work in LGBT rights is through centering stories that are not about violence or abuse. Prior to when we came into organizing, the news was mainly 10 queer people have been beaten, 5 have been arrested, whatnot. And when we started to work, we said that we wanted to center our joy. So on our social media pages, the only time we'd really post about things that are going wrong is if maybe the bill, the anti-LGBT bill, probably is back in the news, and someone has said something, we want to give a rebuttal or we want to fact check. But most of the time you see us centering queer stories, stories of people in the community, people who are in healthy relationships, people who have healthy friendships, people who are just making things happen, and just also joy, just having community events, community parties, hikes. Those are the things we try to center. And we also are archiving all of these things, all of these stories that are happening. Because one thing we would not allow is erasure. And that is one thing that is used to, once again, the word eraser. Like, that is how we are taken out. And that is how, like, we constantly have to fight to say that, we've been here for so long and, like, we've always been doing this. Like, this is who we are. Archiving is also one of the ways that we try to, or is one of the ways that we use to halt this process, or to make sure that our stories and our legacies continue to exist far beyond our lifespan and into other generations.
Noor, would you like to share?
Actually, growing up, I used to read a lot of fiction. I read African, Arab, Western, even Asian fiction. But the thing is that I was shocked that there was no women. There were hardly any women, and the women that were actually in this fiction were portrayed in a way that was shallow, very different from me or any woman that I actually know. That's when I decided that I want to center women in my fiction. I want to portray their psychological and emotional landscapes living under patriarchy, not just as victims, but as political agents of change. I also wanted to build worlds where women can be whatever they want, or I can just show women exploring humanity, what it means to be human, exploring freedom, ethics, or the meaning of life. So it was very important to me that the next girl that's going to pick up my story is going to see herself and see possibilities of her actual self in my work. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. I think what everyone said is so powerful because one of the reasons why I started Black Women Radicals was because I was in a grad program at a historically Black university in Black politics, and nobody was talking about Black women. I'm in political science. You cannot talk about power and not talk about Black women. And I'm in a Black ass school, excuse my language, right? That doesn't make sense. Okay. And so I was always interested about the politics of memory. And then let's not talk about the marginalization of just Black women in the US. They weren't talking about African feminists, Afro-descendant feminists. And so for me, the politics of memory is so important in the archival process, and I really appreciate that, what you were saying, Tracy, archiving joy and not just sites of despair. Yes, we should talk about our pain and our despair and the violence that we suffer, but how are we catalyzing joy and happiness and self-care and passing that down to our posterity, our children, to each other? And so I really appreciate this so much. I wanted to also offer, Tracy talked about this, but I also wanted to offer, if anyone else wanted to share about how they create maroonage and new worlds in their work, right? Across archival, digital, textual, physical, geographical, and spiritual methods. I know Tracy touched on that, and I just wanted to see if Vida would like to speak more about how you create maroonage in your day-to-day.
So I'm currently the chef for LOATAD, and before that, anytime I go to the markets, you know that these girls in the markets, they help you with your luggages, whatever you buy, they help you carry. So normally they are called the kayayus. They are the kayayu. Yeah, so yes. So when normally we go to the market, we source them, we let them carry our things around. They carry the loads and follow us through the market. to buy whatever you want to buy. Then when you're done, you take your things and you go, you pay them. Before I came here, I came to work here. When I go to the market and I let them carry my stuff, I'll pay them something small. And sometimes they'll fight me. Yes. Most of the times they'll fight with me. They'll be like, this is small, where's swat, it's kind of swat, this is. I did not understand it, but now I do. I understand what they meant back then. So this time around, when anytime I go to the market and I need their help, I make sure I don't even ask them how much would you take. I just give. I just give what I can. And they're like, oh, thank you, Midasi, God bless you, Namisha. Anytime they see me at the market, everyone, they want to follow me. They want to go with me. So that is my own small or little way of creating a maroonage for myself and for these girls in the market. Thank you.
It's not small at all. So there are two primary projects that outside of my everyday work that are obsessions of mine. One is called Ukutula, which means silence, but silence in Ukutula means silence, Ukutula means peace. And so this is a gathering of writings from the global south or from Black and women of color around the many violences inflicted in our bodies and personhoods, and how do we use writing as a form of resistance. And so this project has then yielded another project where we are writing and creating workshops and. The second is called Small Girl Rising, Connecting the Divine Black Feminine. And Small Girl Rising uses poetry as the primary medium to understand how can we access memory, to understand what are the different ways in which we have always been able to access our own healing modalities. And so we have various activations. We have intergenerational play where older women teach younger women games that they used to play. We have cooking activations because we understand that the reason why indigenous foods are so delicious is because they're actually meant to be cooked over a long period of time and are supposed to be products of community building. You're supposed to go and fetch the vegetables, grind the vegetables, you're supposed to make the fire, cook together. This is where you find out where so-and-so's daughter is, what mischief so-and-so's son has been up to. This is where you find out whether or not the fields are doing well, whether the rains are being expected. We teach each other about, oh, my husband is not really, and oh, try this, because when I tried it, And so this is, there is so much that happens in the kitchen that we don't realize. And there are writing activations, there are performances but what ways of collecting have we been doing when we do each other's hair, what happens at the hair salon, but also just sitting, there's getting your hair braided, chalet. You hear everything. You hear everything. And so I'm interested in how do we then use the knowledge that we have, how we know how to, as an entry point into remembering the ways in which we have always known how to heal ourselves. And so that's the primary function of Small Girl Rising.
Similarly, I co-lead, or right now I'm the lead of the project. So I lead a project called Decolonized Medicine. It's a project that seeks to remind trans and gender non-conforming persons of what our medicines are what they've always been and how we've always used those to heal ourselves and to make our lives better. So it's quite similar to what you're doing, Vangile. But it's only just for trans and non-binary persons. And it's a global circle that we hold once a month, every last Sunday of the month. And it's virtual on Zoom. And it's facilitated by a trans non-binary person. It's only for people of African descent. And they share what it is that is their medicine. It could be writing, it could be cooking, it could be herbal work, root work, just anything that they have honed as their own medicines that they use to support their lives or to support community, and to just share with other transgender non-conforming people. And if you identify with it, to get resources to embark on that same journey or to use that medicine for your own self. At LGBT rights, I mentioned the archival work. The main reason why we started that is because we said we would not be erased. But the main reason is because the bill had come, and when the anti-LGBT bill came, people were looking for data to support their advocacy and their lobbying. Because you'd go to an MP and you tell the MP that people are being violated, and the MP would tell you to your face that it's a lie. Like, you don't have data. Where are the people? We don't know them. And so we wanted to have data to speak to what it is that our community was facing. But we also, apart from having data to defend ourselves, we also wanted to mark ourselves in time. That we have data all the way back to 1960. But to say that within this century, we existed, and these are the things that we did, these are the things that we produced, these are the things that were said about us, these are the things that people said against us. These are the people who did it. And then also, these are the people who were in community that were doing community work and making things thrive or moving things forward. I can share the link to the archive with anyone who's interested. There's a website for it. And then there's also like a bigger drive that has more data, but that you have to go through a process to get, because we have a lot of personally identifiable information. But it's open to anyone and everyone, whether you're queer or not, if you need it for academic work, or you just want to see what queer people in Ghana are doing. It is not for extraction. You can't come and take it and use it to do something else for things that are not for profits, or things that are for storytelling, or for um, recognizing the people that are here and the work that they're doing and the lives that they're living. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all are busy, that's all I gotta say. Y'all doing a lot. No, I wanted to talk about, we're nearing the end with questions, but we also want to open it up to audience questions on Zoom and in person. But I've always been curious about radical solidarities and the futurity of African feminist politics. As someone who identifies as a Black feminist internationalist, and really advocating for solidarity and world building and movement building, I'm curious, to y'all, what does radical African feminist solidarity mean to you? And how can solidarities between African feminists and feminists in the African diaspora be strengthened? I'm curious about this too at this political juncture. So the first question is, what does radical African feminist solidarity mean to you? And how can African feminists and feminists of the diaspora, our relationships, our solidarities be strengthened?
So radical African feminist solidarities. I love the word radical, because most times I'm like, hello. Like, just wait, I'm about to show you radical. Because people think small change is radical, because they want to, like, they want to keep us trapped. And so the minute you do something that in your view is actually a natural progression, it's deemed radical. And so
I think that in much like the work that you do, where there is a way in which you center your mother and your grandmother in the fundamental spinal cord of knowing and truth that the outside world may deem radical, but is it really? And it's so important, and I think this is a common thread in the work that we do, as we've spoken about. Certain conversations are always felt like they should be reserved for certain spaces. And I think that for all intents and purposes, Black feminist solidarity is understanding that whether I live in Sandton, in Alexander, Kwalanga, Bank, in East Lagon, in is it Tema, in Osu, in what is a rural village? In Jamestown. Jamestown, that's not rural. It's here in the city. I mean, we have rural, like as in rural, gang. But like as in, so regardless, the utensils of oppression may be different, but the heart of our situation is the same. And so because I understand that there is more that brings us together than there is that sets us apart, we can always have a conversation, whether it is on the continent, whether it is across the diaspora. When the young girls from Chibok were stolen, I wrote a poem called Letter to My Stolen Sister, where I said, I understand that the only thing that separates me from you is mountains and a river and perhaps borders. But we are the same. We understand that our bodies are pawns in a bigger game, or political ideology or religious ideology or whatever ideology. Our bodies are not our own. They exist to be moved around on pieces of a chessboard that we are not necessarily allowed to participate in. And so because of that, even with Small Girl Rising and Ugutula, I work with women. And with, for example, Small Girl Rising, what we do is we travel. I mean, I work with Mo Africa Wamukhadi and Khadi. And we travel to the US, and we go into small communities and we listen and ask. So tell us about the games you play. We can find a venue space. We'd like to organize with people who are doing this work here. Can we share knowledge? Can you tell us, what are you doing? Can we share what we are doing? And this is how we operate. And I think that happens across the board in our country and across the continent and across.
It's really amazing. And I would echo the same thing. It's about recognizing that we have more in common than, like, more not in common. I can't find the other word. But it's like having that recognition, and yeah, understanding that we have to have solidarity across genders, across ethnicities, across like various, just the various things that make us us. And also moving from that, doing a lot of collaborations, a lot of sit-ins and teach-ins. I really love that you go to communities and sit with them and listen to what they do, and also like tell them what you do, stuff like that, like just sharing and learning from each other. That's like one of the first steps, and then collaborating. I think it would be really cool if you go to a country you're not from and you find a community that you identify with, and you work there, or you volunteer there, or you support in some way. And also that, and that's where you also receive, and you go back home different. So I think these are the ways.
Okay, Chef. Noor, can you hear me?
Hi again. Yes.
Yes, so the question that we're discussing is what does radical African feminists feminism, what does radical African feminist solidarity, excuse me, mean to you? And how can solidarities between African feminists and feminists of the African diaspora be strengthened?
I have shown a few pictures earlier because it's important to me that everyone has a better image of what's happening in Sudan, and to be aware of that and be aware of what's happening in Congo, in Libya, in Eritrea, in Zimbabwe, in anywhere across the continent or anywhere that is of concern to the African diaspora. That's where solidarity begins, at least by acknowledging the struggles of others and showing up to them across geographies, across languages. And I think we will always be united in our demand for liberation, and that was going to bind us. It's just a matter of how are we going to show up for each other and support each other.
Thank you so much, Noor. And I agree. I think that we need a lot of, one thing I don't like to give credit for, but I'll give credit here. White supremacy is anti-Blackness, all the isms. They're so potent and powerful that it can even like divide across borders, binaries, and boundaries. And we really need all the tools in our arsenal to learn from one another, to explore different knowledges and ways of being and political strategies to really create the world that we really want. It's not just about Black feminisms in the United States or, South African feminisms here or this and that. No, we really need to learn from one another, because if not, we'll be stagnant and siloed and still in the same position 50 years from now. And I do not want to be in the same position 50 years from now. I don't have kids, but if I do have children, I wouldn't want them to be in the same position now. And I don't want us to be having this conversation 50 years from now. So what are we going to do now for each other and with each other? So I really, 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 really appreciate that. So I have one more question and then we'll open it up for questions, because, people are in the chat are already asking questions and already making statements. Tracy, someone was like, I would love the archive. And I know people are going to get me if I don't make sure I share it. And so my last question is, what are your hopes for the future of African feminisms and African feminist maroonage and world making? So my hope for the future for African feminism.
Okay. I hope that, no, I don't hope. I will into life that my daughter will grow up safe. And by my daughter, I don't mean just to live Ulile. I mean every little girl, every Black girl who grows up on this continent and abroad will grow up safe in their bodies, in their homes, in their communities, first and foremost. My daughter loves to dance and my daughter loves to sing. I hope she never loses that. I will into life that she will be singing and dancing all the way to her grave in a ripe old age, and no one will take that away from her. She's also hugely feisty. She'll tell you straight up, that's not for me. She says, Mama, you need to take your big feelings and deal with them and then come back. And that tells me that she knows how to create boundaries around herself, that this is not mine to deal with. That's yours. You keep it, deal with it, and then come back to me when you're okay. I will into life that she never forgets that. I will into life a world that is well, where all life's children are well, are healthy, or at least have access to the possibility of wellness, of happiness, of self-actualization.
I wish that we continue to connect and at a faster rate than we're doing now. That we connect across time, across borders, across language, that we get to understand ourselves, African feminists on the continent and those in the diaspora, that we come to an understanding of our experiences that we share with each other, our cultures and our way of life, and just the things that have made our life easy or continue to make our life easy, as we continue to grow in love and care, and that we bear in the system, because we need to thrive. We need to move out of surviving. I mean, even if the system doesn't bend, that we move from surviving to thriving, that we build our own worlds that allow us to breathe and breathe easy, even if it's for a short period of time, or if it's just a pocket of time, or it's in like a corner of the world and it's not everywhere. That we have that. We deserve to have that, and that we do have that in the end of.
So I wish and I hope and I pray I have a son, and I had to go through and I had to go through a lot, so much pain, and the fear of having to lose my life just to birth him. Sorry, I'm sorry. So right now, I hope and I pray that this boy would grow up to respect the woman, to understand where the woman is coming from. No, and to love the woman, not just the woman in his life, as in a sister or a mother or a wife, but woman in general, because it's not easy to be a woman. We have so much responsibilities on us, but it's like we are nothing. But I tell you, everyone listening, we are something. We are something. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, don't apologize for crying. That's what the maroon is. That's what the maroon is for, right? We have to bring all of us in. And so thank you so much. Noor, would you like to share?
Thank you all. I think most of all, my hope is that in the upcoming future, we don't have to convince the world that our lives matter, because we would have built structures that centers us by design. And I also hope that all African girls, especially those who grew up in displacement, in refuge, in war, which is actually millions, I hope that all of these girls will grow up knowing that their emotions, their rage, and their questions are all valid. And I also hope that our African feminism will remain unapologetically political, that it won't be diluted for funding, it won't be reduced to fit institutional structures that does not serve us, that serve only the oppressor, serve an image that they want to portray about the continent, about the African women and African feminism. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. Michelle Wallace has an article or essay, and some of all the women are white, some of the men are black, but some of us are brave. And it's one of the first pieces, and it's, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's a sister search for like Black feminist sisterhood. And at the last paragraph, she says, I'm paraphrasing, but because Black women are at the bottom, we would have to do what no one has done, it's to fight the world. We would have to fight the world, and I hope in the future we will no longer have to fight the world. I'm not interested in fighting the world. What'd you say? Mark
I
me out.
said amen.
Yeah, the door is closed. Okay, I'm tired, right? I don't want us to fight the world anymore. I want us, to, in the words of Tracy, to thrive. And so thank you all so much. It was really beautiful. Thank you. So this is time for a Q&A. And so please feel free to ask questions to our amazing, y'all are experts, scholars, poets, educators. Oh, we have a couple questions, but wanted to open up of the audience to both audiences, Zoom and in person, if you had any questions. So I guess I could take this one question here on Zoom. So someone asks, as builders and divine beings in your own right, how are you tending to the world within? Amidst your movements, your work, your purpose-driven actions, how do you tend to yourselves? Who keeps you strong or holds you up in this lifetime? How do you keep your hope, your knowings, your rememberings alive? That was a poem.
Yeah, I love this question because of community around me. I am held, I am deeply loved. When I gave birth to my daughter, who I co-parent with my best friend because we decided this is the village that we wanted to create for ourselves. And when she adopted Usfiso, our son, when we decided that this was the community we were going to build, I gave birth to my child and I had women all around me taking care of absolutely everything so that I could just breastfeed and rest and recover. And my whole life is not perfect by any means. And I have suffered a great deal. But for every ounce of suffering, I have seen what it is like to sit in the heart of God because of the people who surround me, who love me, who ask me, are you okay? You're in Ghana for a month. Do you need support in taking care of your child? Is your mama okay? You're going to do this. Are you okay? Are you making ends meet financially? What support do you need? I know you're out in the world to build the world and make it better. Do you need a hug? Do you need a glass of wine? What can we do to keep you held? And so because of that, and I know I deserve it because I give it, I receive it, and I have it. And so I'm deeply, deeply thankful.
Yes, so the question is, as world builders and divine beings in your own right, how are you tending to the world within? Amidst your movements, your work, your purpose-driven actions, how do you tend to yourselves? Who keeps you strong or holds you up in this lifetime? How do you keep your hope, your knowings, your remembrance alive?
I love to sing. Yes, I love to sing. So what keeps me going, what keeps me up all the time is music. If I get words that I cannot just sing out, sometimes I write it down and I know that one day those words or those lines are going to come out and everyone or people are going to hear and listen to those words. And that keeps me going. Whatever I feel, whatever I experience, whether good, bad, I write it down. So I have like, I don't know if I should say it's a diary or a book or whatever. I'm not there yet, but I write down all those things and I hope that one day if I leave this earth, those words will be out for everyone to hear. And I know it's gonna change lives. Yes. Thank you.
She be singing, y'all.
Okay, I tend to myself, or I take care of myself through community, or I'm taking care of my community, and also through raving and raging. So the three ways. Raving and raging. So partying really, really well with community, but also when I get to work, if it's time to bash some people online, we're at it. It's time to do some advocacy thing. We're there, protest, we're there. That's how we do it.
Raving and raging. It's just road rage for me by another name, okay? Noor, would you like to share?
Sure. I think I tend to myself to nurturing my spirituality by following Islamic rituals that bring peace to my soul and give me energy to conquer the world, knowing that I'm not doing this for nothing. It's not all for nothing. There is meaning to everything. And I also love to think about my family as I go through fighting whatever battles I'm going to fight, knowing that I'm also doing this not just for me, but for those who raised me and those who will forever be the reason why I am what I am. And also, I'm a very ambitious and driven person. I want to change, I want to grow and improve. And that's what wakes me up every day. I want to be a better writer, I want to write about people and help them eventually as a doctor, hopefully. That's what keeps me going.
Thank you, Noor. Yes. And then we're gonna get some more questions via Zoom. We're just having a question asked in person.
Hi, thank you all for your time today. I've really enjoyed listening to you speak. In particular, I really enjoyed and appreciated you talking about Indigenous forms of cooking together and how it allows time for slowness and research through the form of gossip as well. I'm really interested in archival practices, specifically Indigenous archival practices. So I'm curious about your knowledge of Indigenous forms of archiving, and also your favorite discovery through learning about Indigenous practices as well.
Okay. Indigenous archival. Recently, I think upon close interaction with the Adinkra symbols, I found myself returning home and learning more about the Bantu symbols, because I understand, and also been very interested in archival, because I understand that publishing is a lot more than this book that we hold and say is the only source of knowledge kept. And so I found myself learning more about the Bantu symbols and how they were connected to the rock art images, and the stories that were told through that. I have learned a lot about weaving and how baskets are messages and notes. I learned a lot about beadwork. I went to a beadwork workshop and learned about what different colors of beads. I mean, through my own spirituality, I learned about earning beads by task. So you undergo a particular initiation process, and then your reward is a particular gift. So when you see a healer wearing particular colors, then it gives you an indication of what tasks they have undergone in order to get to those colors. But outside of traditional indigenous spirituality, there's also the beads as part of our life cycle, and each bead has a particular meaning. And so the formation of bead work is messages. There's a beautiful bead
work story that I saw that was called the Zulu Love Letter. And basically it's a love letter to this woman's partner based on how she has arranged these beads that have particular meanings. Obviously, we know that our hair and the ways in which we have always done our hair has also been an indicator of where we are from or messages that are being shared. Cornrows were maps previously before so to try and remember which slave routes were taken, and that's what the cornrows were. Outside of that, also understanding that tattoos are not necessarily Western things. They've always been markings, speak of tribes, of practices, of rites of passages that you have experienced or have not experienced. There are also things like in isiXhosa, I remember they do something called Ingrid, where and I say this very aware of the judgment that will come around it, and I hope that we are all open-minded enough to understand that different practices are not understood by everybody. But children of particular clans and families, the tip of their finger is clipped off. So they have Ingrid, which is half a finger, and that says what family the child is from. And these are also archival methods. And this happens when the child is born. There's a famous story called Tyala la Mawele, where this woman gives birth. Well, her child comes out, a hand comes out, and the woman doesn't know she's carrying twins. The hand comes out, and then they clip the finger because they think that the baby is being born. And then the baby pulls the hand back, and then another baby comes out and doesn't have the clipped finger. And then the whole story is around which is the oldest baby. It's a fantastic story, but bottom line is there are many different ways in which we have always known how to carry our stories through. Also, we can't discard oral archiving as fickle or unreliable, because we know that there are songs that we have known since the beginning of time, and these songs come from somewhere, tell us something. So during particular rites of passage, particular songs will be sung, and these are ways in which our stories are archived and knowledge is passed on.
Nora, would you like to share? You don't
I
have
think I
to.
have, yeah. I'm not familiar with archiving, actually.
I would beg to differ. You are definitely an archivist, but we'll talk about that later, girl. Okay.
Okay.
So this question is for Vangile. And this must be somebody who knows you, because they were like, gantsho. Your poem on motherhood, which you read in conversation with Natalie Diaz, touched me deeply and has stayed with me for many years. As a mother to 5, I think a lot about motherhood. I'm curious what you and all of you might have to say about the relationship between motherhood and maroonage. So this is not only for Vangile, it's for what do you think about motherhood and maroonage?
I'm trying to remember what poem this was. They don't say what poem it was. I have many thoughts on mothers and daughters. I think mothers and daughters are real life examples of how time happens all at once. Because mothers are trying to find themselves, learn themselves, while raising their daughters who are in many ways replicas or mirrors or stark contrasts of themselves. And so I have gained deep empathy for my mother as a mother. And before I was a mother, I fought a lot with my mother, who I felt did not understand me. I now understand that it wasn't me she didn't understand, it was herself. And I happened to happen at a time when she was discovering herself, learning about herself, growing into herself. And so my mother is a lot gentler with my daughter because she knows herself a lot better. And I imagine perhaps I will be gentler with my granddaughter. I try to not suffer my daughter the ways in which I'm still processing myself. But I also do understand that it's not easy having the small mirror that you can't get rid of. In the best and most, I mean, I remember saying to Jamie that I look at my daughter and I realize I must have played as a child. I can't remember, but I must have, because here she is. And so, and everyone keeps telling me that she's exactly like me. Even when I was little, I was like this. So I must have played. So what have I blocked out in my childhood that doesn't allow me to access my small girl? And I think about what that must mean to my mother, who once said to me, you children, you place so much emphasis on happiness. What is this happiness that you're always chasing? And I understand that my mother has worked all her life to take care of her family and her siblings and everyone around her. So she had no time for happiness. And so self-actualization takes time and space, requires time and space. And mothering is a full-time job, and it is difficult to process and understand yourself while mothering.
So the last question, does anyone have any questions from the audience? Don't be scared. I see you. Okay. We have another question from Zoom. How does feminism, particularly intersectional feminism, support and uplift the experiences and support and uplift the voices and lived experiences of ITGNC persons? And what gaps still exist in feminist movements when it comes to fully embracing gender diversity?
Read that again one more time.
Oh, yes, I can definitely read it one more time.
No. So how does feminism, particularly intersectional feminism, support and uplift the voices and lived experiences of ITGNC persons? And what gaps still exist in feminist movements when it comes to fully embracing gender diversity?
So intersectional feminism is one of the feminisms that tries to, I say try because it still has a way to go, but it tries to create space for queer feminists or for ITGNC feminists or ITGNC people. It, what is coming to mind is one time I went to a program and intersectional feminism was mentioned. And it turned out that there were two definitions that were existing in the same Accra. There was an intersectional feminist who thought, or whose understanding of it was that we were centering women, but women at different intersections except queerness. So women who are poor, women who are disabled, all of that, but queer women were not a part of it, or like queer people were not a part of it. And there was a section of us who we are queer feminists, so of course we identify or we understand intersectional feminism as, involving queer people, understanding that at these various intersections, like people are experiencing oppression with, like, it's multi-layered because of the intersection they stand at. And because of that, that's how we approach our feminism. And that's how through that lens is how we approach our work. So what is lacking, I guess, would be like the universal understanding of what intersectional feminism is, what it seeks to achieve, and the results that can be gotten from it. I feel like it is seen as like a threat to general feminism or like the overall feminism, that's including people who are not women, or including Yeah, including people other than women, that there's a shift in like who attention is on, or there's like a scarcity in resources, or there'll be a scarcity in resources that we've not even gotten yet. So that is probably something that is missing, but I think it's one of the feminisms that is making space, or one of the what's it called, class of feminism. So one of the types of feminism that is creating space for ITGNC people, that recognizes that all of our oppressions are connected. And if trans people are not free, then women are not going to be free.
So if there are not any more, does anyone have any other questions from the audience? And if there's not, that concludes our amazing discussion. I want to thank Noor Salah for being here, Tracy Owoo. I want to thank Vangile Gantsho and Vida Agbolosu for being here, for being wonderful panelists. And thank you all. I want to thank LOATAD for collaborating. The amazing Seth. Yes. And thank you all for being here. To folks on Zoom and here, I will be hounded if I don't say this. You will receive a recording of this conversation. It will also be on our YouTube, and we'll also share the links to the amazing work that each of the panelists are doing. So thank y'all so much. Noor, Tracy, Vangile, Vida, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you as well, Jamie.
Thank y'all. Okay. Free to get up and move around and get contact network, get contact information. I'm gonna close out the Oh, Noor. Noor, we ran a lot of time.
You know?
Did someone call me?
We're gonna take a photo really quickly, okay? We're gonna wait for Vida, but we're gonna take a photo, okay? Thanks, you did a good job. Thank you. What you say? I know.
Thank you, Seth.
You know?
Come over here.
I know that, Thank you.
I love this good, like,
Should I change this dress?
why? Yes, I did. I wore it for our photo.
Me today.
I was like, I'm tired today. I was so tired. I was in the rock. Oh my God. No, thank you.
So equivalent.
Yep, everyone wants to take, we're just, Vida, hey, I get glasses. Debbie. Yes.
Well, I remember school down south, but I finished on the East Coast. I was pretty good. I did.
Wait, what's your last name?
I'm assuming you have a lot of people in common. You work with, I work in like, justice, justice.
Yes. Where did you work? Reproductive justice.
Well, right now, the prior was mostly ancient real services, like 50%. Sure, we have a lot of people.
We probably do.
But I, you know, I was in DC for like the system stuff.
Okay, that's why, yes, okay. I was in DC for about like 2013 till like 2020.
Yeah, I moved to New York for 2014.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we definitely crossed paths. That's so nice. I love your commentary. You have to crack it up, yes. It's nice meeting you. Good to see you again. Okay, so we're gonna take Vida, yeah. You know, my mom was like, she's like, oh, she's so powerful. I said, she said, and every time I said something about, oh, they.
And then I think, you know, there was so many things that You don't think about it when you're there every day, so when you go to the clean air, and then you come back. But if you look at people not, they think it's a lot of friends, yeah. Oh, exactly. Not related, okay, we have a scheme like with all the shallowness, I can see do it so long, yeah, and I mean, yeah. I think that they're. That's okay. Yeah, no, what I mean. There can be some games that yeah, and I'm so used to it. Now that it's here, I mean, that's kind of what I did, is negative, and then I didn't find any writing. Maybe there's something, and most people of my friends. You know, it's nice. I'm not going to lastly,
I think we're gonna take it.
I think she left.
Yeah.
I guess because you're there. I think she left. Okay. Trying to. The next one.